Welcome everyone to our Resurgence book club. I hope you're all having a good evening and enjoying the springtime. I'm very, very pleased to say that joining us today is the one and only Satish Kumar. And he is talking to us today about his excellent book, Soil, Soul and Society. And it's very exciting to be joined by Satish today, because I do work with him, but it's really wonderful to share his vision with people and just to discuss some of his ideas. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to you all about that. Just a little bit about the format of how we do our book clubs if you're new to them. We begin with a discussion with Satish. And if you would like to ask a question, we ask you to put it in the chat box, and I will ask Satish your question, and that will carry on until 7:40. And at 7:40, we'll say cheerio to Satish, and we'll carry on the discussion just amongst ourselves. So thank you again. And this one, we're going to start slightly differently, because just to reflect some of the ideas in Satish's book. So Satish, I'm asking you today to start with just a 5-minute meditation.
Good. Thank you, Marianne, for inviting me to your book club. And I'm very happy to be your guest. And let's start with 5 minutes meditation. If you are comfortable, please put your both feet on the floor and bring your both palms together. And then bring your attention to your breath. Breathe, smile, relax. And then bow to the sacred earth, which sustains us, nourishes us, cares for us. We are one with the earth. We are made of the earth. So we bow in gratitude and in thanks for all the gifts of life that we receive from the earth every day. Breathe, smile, relax, let go. Let go of any doubts, fears, anger, frustration. Breathe, smile, relax, let go. And when we breathe, we are mindful that all living beings upon this earth, humans and other than humans, are sustained by the same breath of life that we breathe. Thus, through our breath, we are all connected. We are all related. With that sense of unity of all life, breathe, smile, relax, let go. Let go of all worries, obsessions, attachments. And as you breathe, feel free and smile at the world, beauty of the world, eternity of the world, generosity of the world. Relax in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your consciousness. You are a complete being, a whole being, a microcosm of macrocosm. And let go. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our heart, our world, our universe. Peace, peace, peace. Breathe, smile, relax, let go, and feel peace in your heart. And feel the whole cosmos is our country. The whole earth is our home. All diversity of nature is our family. And love for all is our religion. With that sense of great unity of life, expansive consciousness, big mind, big heart. Breathe, smile, relax, let go. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. That was really beautiful. And that's such a wonderful way to start our book club. So Soil, Soul and Society is a new Trinity for our times. And the reason I wanted to start with that meditation, apart from the fact that it's such a wonderful practice to do, is that you mentioned in your book, and I'll quote you here, whether it is peace or war, praising or blaming, it all begins with our minds. Therefore, begin with your mind. Look at the thought process that is going on within you. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about that, the thought process going on within you in the context of this new Trinity that you're talking about.
Yes, yes. When I talk about mind, everything begins our mind, in our thoughts. And we make the world as we think of the world. So mind is not just thinking mind, but also feeling mind, sensing mind, a conscious mind, imaginative mind. So mind has a many, many big dimensions. And so everything begins with mind, with our thought, whether you're poetry or your novel or building a house or running a country or running a business, running a magazine as you are editor, everything begins in mind. And so if we can have a clarity of mind, purity of mind, and a kind of largeness of mind, then our action, our words, our activities will express that largeness, that generosity, that inclusiveness. If our minds are narrow, if minds are small, if minds are full of anger and fear and mistrust and doubt, that will express in our action, in our activities, in our words, in our relationship with other people. So mind is the key before we can make soil, soul, society outside. It's the inner world. Mind is the inner world. Without inner world being together, outer world cannot be together. So inner is the mind and outer is soil and society particularly, and the soul as well. So this is why I put mind very important.
Thank you. Yes. And can you tell us a bit about, I mean, what you mean by soil, soul and society?
Now, what I mean is that all our cultures encapsulate their vision in 3 words. If you take French Revolution, they had 3 words: égalité, liberté, fraternité. Our Christianity has Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I often say to my Christian friends, Father is fine, but where is the mother? And the Son is fine, but where is the daughter? And Holy Spirit is fine, but also holy matter. So, but what I mean to say is that I wanted to find 3 words which represent the environmental, ecological, regenerative, worldview. And so I wanted to bring soil, soul, society, or those three words. And in those three words, I am saying that environmental movement is not only natural environment, but also about spiritual environment and also about social environment. So for me, environmental movement has three levels, three dimensions. Quite often people think the environmental movement means only forests and mountains and rivers and oceans and wild animals and so on. Yes, they are environment. That's a natural environment. But we are also spiritual environment of ideas and philosophies and spirituality and love and compassion and kindness. All those are the environment in which we live. And therefore, we cannot ignore the spiritual dimension. And also, we live in human community. So social environment is also important. So these three dimensions of environment, most people either they are social activists or they are spiritual meditators and community living and so on. They go for retreats and so on, or they are only conservation or environmentalists and ecologists. So I want to bring this bigger picture together. This is why I wrote and I created this Trinity for our time, soil, soul, society, to make it more inclusive and a bit more bigger.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to pick up on from your book was that, relating to just what you were talking about, you talk about the peace movement and the ecology movement and how they really need to work together.
Yes.
But I mean, you wrote this book nearly 10 years ago, and I was wondering if there's been any change since then that you've seen, where these two have been coming together.
Yes, there have been a change. And even the Secretary General of the United Nations has spoken about making peace with Mother Earth and peace with nature. So peace and environmental movement is coming together and has come together. Because if we have wars, they are the greatest threat to the environment. They create lots of pollution and waste, all the armaments and a kind of bombing and all that. And the kind of amount of fossil fuel used by the military and their aeroplanes, their bombing. So the lack of peace is a detrimental to the sustainable and a good environmental conditions for the world. And so peace and environment go together. And I'm very glad that the Secretary General of the United Nations has spoken about it. And also Greenpeace is a kind of good example, bringing green and peace together. So peace in our heart, peace in the world, and peace with nature. These are the three dimensions, soil, soul, society dimension of peace as well. So I wanted to bring those two together because I was a peace activist before I became an environmentalist. And I walked from India to America via Moscow and Paris and London. And so that was my peace activism. But I realized that we cannot have peace among people unless we also have peace with nature, because lots of wars happen because of resources, for water, for land, for oil, from mines. And so a lot of our impact on the natural environment comes because of economic situation. And the war happens because we want to possess those resources, natural resources. So when you become an environmentalist, you realize that nature is not simply a resource for the economy, but nature is a source of life itself. And that big vision coming together is important for me. And therefore, I want to bring peace and ecology together.
Excellent, thank you. It has been a while. I mean, in the last 10 years since you wrote the book, quite a lot has happened in the UK. And when we've had Brexit, we've had Fridays for the Future movement, we've had Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, and of course the COVID pandemic. If you were to write the book now, I mean, how would you incorporate these events into the book? And if so, how would you do it?
Yes, I will incorporate all those activism. And of course, this is very inspiring for me to see a young woman like Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion and many other similar activism. It's very inspiring. And young people give me a lot of inspiration. In the next issue of, or this latest issue of Resurgence, I have written about Amanda Gorman. And so these young women especially give me great inspiration. So I will write about these movements in my book if I was writing now. But the fundamental ideas and principles are the same. What I have formulated in the last issue of Resurgence, I wrote about it, is that we have to express the environmental movement at three levels. One is to protest, and this is what Greta Thunberg and the Extinction Rebellion in particular are doing. We have to protest what is wrong in the world, but that is not enough. And Soil Soul Society reminds you that protesting should lead to protecting as well. And we should protect what is already good, our indigenous cultures, indigenous wisdom, beauty, and integrity, and arts and crafts, and small farming, family farms, small businesses, ecological lifestyle. All these things we protected as well. If we don't work to protect, then just protesting is not enough. And also I am saying that protecting is not enough as well. We also need to build new alternatives, because we always have to evolve. We cannot remain stagnant in our old traditions and old cultures and old values. We have to revive them and vitalize them. And therefore, protesting is good, but we need to have protecting with it. And protecting is good. We also need to build new alternative ideas. And all those things have to come with love in your heart and compassion in your heart. And so non-violence is very important for me. So all those basic ideas are in the book. So I don't think my book is out of date. But if I was writing a new book, of course, I will mention these new developments. That's all changes. But the philosophical ideas are, I think, still valid and relevant today.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. We've got some questions that were sent in that I would like to ask you. I think Amy is going to help me here by popping them in the chat box, my colleague Amy, because some of them are quite long. But this one is from Jo.
Yes.
And she says, in your book, you urge readers to create a new consciousness that reveres nature and explores how, as a global society, we need to embrace diversity and become pilgrims on this earth, not tourists.
Yeah.
To bring about change in the world, we must be the change we wish to see.
Yes.
So Joe's question is part of the problem that we call ourselves human beings, which defines us as a person with no apparent connection to nature? Would a better term be nature beings, or a similar word, so that it is immediately apparent that we are a part of nature, which might bring about a change in attitude to one of respect, compassion, gratitude, and reverence towards Mother Earth? Ultimately, every species on Earth is a nature being.
Yes, exactly. Now, actually, we call ourselves human beings. If you go to the etymological root of the word human, it comes from humus. And humus means soil. So human beings are literally soil beings. Our body is made of soil. So the food we eat is made of soil. All the oranges and apples and bananas and the wheat and bread and rice and all that we eat. So all soil transformed into food. It's a nature's magic. It's a miracle of nature that you put a seed in the ground, and that one seed becomes a tree, and tree gives you 1,000 apples and oranges and bananas and all that. So human beings are nature beings. Human beings are soil beings. So we are not separate from nature. We are nature. Also, nature, the etymological meaning of nature is birth, natal, like pre-birth is prenatal, post-birth is postnatal. So natal and nature come from the same root. So we are born, so we are nature. Everything but is born is nature. So human beings and nature beings are one. We are made of soul, and human also comes from humility. Humility is, without humility, there's no humanity. So if we have humility towards nature, and soil is always very humble. Soil is very humble because it's always under your feet, never goes on your head. And humidity comes from the same root, and humidity is water. And so humidity, humility, humus, human beings, and nature, birth, if you put all those words together, then we are one. We cannot be separate from nature. Nature and humans are one. It's a diversity. Evolution favors diversity. Over the billions of years, evolution has created so many different life forms: biodiversity, cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, truth diversity. So diversity should be celebrated rather than creating conflict and wars and fighting and putting soil down and putting nature down and putting humans up, and then among humans putting one class of humans up, one nation up, one religion up. All these are our creation. In nature, everything is equal. So I would say human beings are nature beings.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a question from Damien as well. Damien asks, the current opposition of the farmers in India against the changes proposed by the government has many parallels with the time Mahatma Gandhi was opposed to the UK government.
Yeah.
Where has the soul of Gandhi gone? Who is going to be able to lead this opposition in a peaceful and successful manner?
Yes. It is a great tragedy that Mahatma Gandhi did not have chance and enough time to build India of his dreams. After the independence of India, within about 6 months that he was assassinated. And so India took a different route, more industrialized, urbanized, mechanized, and consumerist route, following the Western tradition. And what is happening now, the farmers rising and the government trying to industrialize the farms. Government is trying to reduce the small holdings and the family farms and make them larger and larger and bring more people into cities to do more industrial production. So this is a kind of Western trend, and most of our education in India is Western style. So we value in our education the industrial development and industrial production as a sign of development and sign of progress, and working on the land and working with your hands and producing food with your hands is a kind of uneducated, backward, and unclever people do it. And so we want to educate them and mechanize the farming. This is a tragedy for me. And so I would say that yes, but Mahatma Gandhi's spirit is still alive in India. If you go, the farmers' movement is a kind of symbol of Gandhian spirit, but also people like Vandana Shiva. She is protecting the seeds, organizing the farmers, organic farming and organic gardening, and protecting rural values and protecting rural cultures and family farms. That's a very good. And so if you travel in rural India, you will still find Gandhian spirit and Gandhian values still alive and still powerful. But government level and the urban level and the media level and the technological level is not there. And so it is a tragedy, and I'm very sad about it, but I'm very proud that people like Vandana Shiva and many friends like that, I can list it, quite a lot of people, but Vandana's name is famous. And so many people like that are still working at the grassroots level, and I hope that they all powers to their elbows and they succeed and bring the Gandhian spirit back into India.
Have you, just following on from that, have you been inspired by any of the farmers living in Devon, for example, who've shown support for the farmers in India?
Yes. The farmers in India have been inspired by many people. Even, Albert Howard, for example, he was in India, went from West, and he influenced lots of Indians, and he was influenced by India because Indian agriculture and the compost making, all that was very inspiring. And so there is a kind of international movement going on, and people are kind of cross-pollinating the ideas. And so lots of people are working in India from the West and working, bringing ideas together. And this eco-village network is very strong in India, but it's also all over the world. Eco-village network is now in the United States and in Australia and in India. And recently they had a conference and there was something like 10,000 people participating. So there's a lot of cross-pollination is going on, and lots of Indian farmers are influencing the Western farmers, and Western farmers are influencing Indian farmers.
I'm sorry, my question wasn't very clear. What I meant was there have been a lot of farmers in Devon. I think the Land Workers Alliance and smallholders and people, organic farmers, who have shown support for the farmers in India, saying, we support you, we show you that we are behind you and we don't want this to happen, and
Yes.
we back you, kind of thing.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if you'd come across that and what you thought about it.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. But yes, Devon farmers are supporting Indian farmers. Yes. And I have not come across many, but one or two examples I know. And that's very good. I want to have international solidarity. And so people supporting farmers in India is very good.
Excellent, thank you. We've got a question from Stephen. And Stephen says, in your book, you say nature seen as an inanimate machine becomes an object of exploitation, whereas nature seen as sacred becomes a source of inspiration for the arts, culture, architecture, and of course, religion and spirituality. I entirely agree with this, but enabling others to see things this way seems a daunting task in our materialistic world. Would you agree with me that perhaps the way for people to regard nature as sacred, as well as, and at the same time as pursuing more practical means, must involve to some degree people being able to experience the sacred in their own lives?
Yes, I would agree with that. People have to experience sacred in their own lives. I would agree with that. The attitude towards nature has been cultivated over the last 200 years, particularly scientists like many scientists have seen nature as a machine and, and, um, and the earth as a dead rock. And so that has been educated in our minds, and the young people have been conditioned to think that nature is inanimate, nature is a machine, and earth is a dead rock. But now the new science is emerging, Gaia and deep ecology, and James Lovelock, Lynn Margulis, Rupert Sheldrake, Fritjof Capra. There are many, many new scientists, and at Schumacher College, we are bringing that science very strongly. And so I think education has to change. And in education, we have to bring this idea that Earth is a living organism, and nature is not a machine, but it's a living organism, and sacred. Sacred means sacrificing life to maintain life. That's the meaning of sacred. And so Earth sacrifices itself, and food is given to us. So that is okay, as long as we take from nature only for our need and not for our greed. When we become greedy, then we waste and pollute. 30 to 40% of food in the world is wasted. Now that if you had a sacred sense of the sacred, there will be no waste. If you have a sense of the sacred, there will be no pollution. Because you cannot pollute something which is sacred, which is you revere. So deep ecology is to understand the intrinsic value of nature. And so I would say to bring the sense of the sacred, we have to bring that into education from a young life. And when you are young in your school and university and you are growing up, and this Duke of Edinburgh Award should not be limited only to few people who get the award. That kind of experience of nature as a sacred source of life should be part of everybody's experience in education, schools and universities. So that's how I connect sacred and nature.
Wonderful, thank you. Nicholas has sent through a message. Nicholas asks, I've been working for 10 years for the protection of the environment in Europe. I observe that Western consciousness has an essentially technical and economic approach to respond to environmental challenges. How can we develop a spiritual approach to nature in the West?
Now, absolutely very good question. How do we develop spiritual aspect of nature? By changing our attitude towards nature. As I said before, our attitude towards nature has been that nature is a resource for the economy. Production and consumption has become the means to an end, and the end is economic growth. Humans have also become means to an end, the end of economic growth. So we call them human resources or natural resources. Humans are not a resource for the economic growth and economy, and nature is not a resource for the economic growth and economy. Humans and nature and their well-being should be the end. And economic growth and production and consumption and profit and market should be the means to the end of well-being. So in order to bring spirituality and spiritual dimension, we have to change this means and ends juxtaposition. What are the means and what are the ends? If we make economic growth and production and consumption at the end and human beings and nature as the means, that's a materialism. That's a kind of lack of spirituality. The moment we transform that into making humans and nature at the end, their caring and integrity and protection at the end, and all our production and consumption should be to ensure that the nature is protected and humans are taken care of, then it becomes spiritual. So spirituality is a kind of attitude, a kind of motivation. What are our values? What is our worldview? That is the way to do it. And again, I would say we have to bring that into our education, into our families. And children have to grow with that idea. At the moment, our children are brainwashed to think of nature as a resource. And that's a materialistic aspect. Our education will tell children nothing exists unless you can measure. That's a materialism. You can only measure matter. You cannot measure spirit. So if we can teach children that there is something you can measure, there is something you cannot measure but still exists. You cannot measure friendship. You cannot measure love of your mother. You cannot measure love and compassion. So there are things which you cannot measure but still they exist. So we have to understand those two aspects together. And that has to come in education. This is why I started small school in Heartland and I started Schumacher College, because I want to bring education into this matter. And this is why I would like to create a new movement, education as if people and planet matter. And this Resurgence and Ecologist magazine under your leadership and editorship and Schumacher College, we are bringing an essay competition to bring education as if people and planet matter. The moment you say people and planet matter, that's a kind of spiritual attitude. This is how we have to go.
Thank you very much. Just on the topic of Schumacher, of course, he's an important part of the book, and you're talking about your influences and how his work inspired you to start Schumacher College. And this year we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the founding of Schumacher College. Can you tell me a little bit about how Schumacher's legacy is still important for us today?
Schumacher, one of the essays Schumacher wrote was called Buddhist Economics. And that is the first time a mainstream economist, educated at Oxford, working for the government, working for the United Nations, dared to put those two words together, economics and Buddhism. Buddhism is a metaphor for spiritual values and non-materialistic values. So this is the kind of inspiration that somebody who comes up with this idea that economics without ethics, without spirituality, without values, cannot be good economics. Economics need the spirit and values and ethics. So that was one great inspiration. The second great inspiration is the idea of small is beautiful. I think our society is going for everything has to be big and big and big, big corporations, big government, big business, big hospitals, big universities, everything big. And human scale gets lost. Human spirit gets lost. And therefore decentralized, local, human scale, where humanity and human compassion and human community and human relationship can play a very important role, and your imagination and your creativity and your dialogue with other humans can be central to your activities and not be everything by rule bound and bureaucratic and administered and managerial, all these things which become part of the big organizations. So those two things, one, that spirituality and materialism must go together. Buddhist economics. That's the kind of main contribution of E.F. Schumacher. And the second, small is beautiful. Keep human scale. Keep your mind big. Keep the heart big, consciousness big. Think globally and have a compassion for whole one humanity. But act locally and have your roots in your local community and have a small scale organization, small schools, small hospitals, small government, small business, a small scale, and not so much greed, but based in need. That is the kind of great contribution of Schumacher, and this is why we were so inspired. And actually, Schumacher was very much in the beginning of Resurgence magazine. He was a regular contributor in every single issue of Resurgence. He wrote an article, an essay. There are about 35 articles written by Schumacher in Resurgence. And we have published a little book called This I Believe, which is a collection of Resurgence articles, as a book. And so Schumacher's influence is very strong in my life and on Resurgence and also on Schumacher College.
In the context of the pandemic, do you think that Schumacher's ideas are perhaps becoming more of a reality, or is it an opportunity to share these ideas more widely?
Yes, I think it's a great opportunity because this COVID crisis shows us that our relationship with the natural world, based on materialistic exploitation of nature, has not been right. And that is one of the major cause of this pandemic. People like David Attenborough, people like Jane Goodall, all these scientists are saying to us that this encroachment of natural world, bigger and bigger and bigger footprint on planet Earth, and this impingement of natural and wild habitat, that we have been going and destroying rainforests and creating soya farms and factory farms, and the food we produce is not eaten but wasted and fed to animals and wasted. And so unless we change that, we are not going to be a very happy society in the future. And so I think this COVID crisis is an opportunity to rethink and reset our values and our economics and create more Schumacher style of small is beautiful principle economics. And just technology will not solve all the problems. Technology and government policies will go so far. But unless we change our values and our worldview and our attitude to nature and simplify our life, that's my another book called Elegant Simplicity. Simplify our lives and live in harmony with nature and live frugally and more expand not in material possessions and consumption, but in our imagination and poetry, dance, music, and families and friendship and gardening and cooking and good life. That is wonderful. That's what Schumacher wanted. Good life without destroying natural world. And I think the time of Schumacher's vision is not gone, it's coming. It's now as coming. And post-COVID, I think people are now more ready to change and embrace a more ecological, more elegantly simple, and more creative and more imaginative lifestyle. So I think this COVID crisis presents us with an opportunity to change our ways. It's a nature's challenge. It's a Gaia is challenging you. The way you have been behaving, children, human children, wake up. That's not the right way to behave. So I think it's a great opportunity for us that we should not go back business as usual, but create a new way of being, a new way of living.
Thank you. That's very heartening to hear you say that. Thanks, Satish. We've got time for one last question, and this is from Jill. She asks, given we are a consumer society, I'm wondering if educating young people to be ethical entrepreneurs would be useful. Small, ethical, local businesses, using human energy and creativity. At the moment, I'm not sure this education exists. It may also heighten awareness in young people of how unethical large corporations can be.
Yeah, I mean, the teaching children to be ethical entrepreneurs. I'm not talking about being entrepreneur. The word has a very ambiguous sort of meaning. What I'm trying to say is that children need to be informed and open to a different worldview. The moment you have a different way of looking at nature, different attitude towards nature and towards other human beings, then all your activities, your business, your farming, your architecture, your industry, they all change. This is why we began. Your first question was, it begins with our mind. So in the children's education, we are touching their minds. And when we are touching their minds, we are not just brainwashing them in thinking into materialistic and training them just for jobs. So that you come out of school, out of university, and get a job, and job for yourself. So you be more successful, more money, big car, big house, big position, big power, big prestige, all those things. That's a very egotistical pursuit of education and egotistical pursuit of life. And so what I'm saying is that by bringing a more ecological worldview and a more harmonious worldview and a more relational worldview into education, we are going to nourish their minds in a much fuller way and not starve them from all these nourishing ideas. At the moment, our children's minds are in a way kind of emptied and starved, and they are only given one single, like Newton's single vision William Blake talked about. And so I'm advocating expanding the mind and bringing this spiritual and psychological and material all together, holistic, inclusive. And so this is not entrepreneurship as such. And so I'm talking more than ethics and more than entrepreneurship. I'm talking about a more holistic, inclusive, spiritual worldview introduced in our education so that our children grow up with clear mind and a compassionate heart and a skillful. With their hands, they can grow food, they can cook food, they can build house, they can build furniture, they can make something with their hands. So the education of head, education of heart, education of hands. That's the kind of holistic education that I'm advocating.
We have one quick question from Kaz. The current education system is so far from what we're talking about. I've just resigned as a teacher because the management systems have changed so much in the last few years. Children now are now learning a sausage factory of facts. How can we possibly begin to transform this?
Yes, it's a big question and it's a big challenge. It's not easy, but a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, first step. And therefore, although it's a big challenge, how are we going to change the educational system? All the universities, Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale and big universities around the world, they're all geared towards industrial system. And they are designed to maintain the industrial, materialistic, consumerist structure of society. Now, but in our post-COVID situation and in an age of ecology and environment, this is out of date. And so how are we going to change it is a big question. And I don't have a magic answer or magic bullet answer to give, but we have started Schumacher College as a small example. And we are launching this essay competition for ideas and proposals. And we are trying to influence universities and colleges and schools. And so those who are interested in transforming education, we all have to join together, create a movement of awareness, and start somewhere. As I said, a big change happens with small steps. How did Mahatma Gandhi bring an end to imperialism and colonialism? Started small by spinning wheel. How did Martin Luther King started to bring end to racism? Started by bus boycott. And so wherever we can do something, start doing rather than think, oh, it's too big task, we can't do it, it's too much to change. How are we going to change it? It's so impossible. Of course, it's very big, and yet human energy, human imagination, and human power is bigger than all the systems that we are facing. So the educational system is created by humans, it can be changed by humans. So let's have that confidence and that power, and let's become activists.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We don't have time for any more questions, unfortunately, but on that subject of a journey, every journey begins with one step perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your latest book, Satish.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Sentiment of publicity. I have written a new book, and the new book is called Pilgrimage for Peace. And this book is the story of my walk from India through Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Russia, Moscow, Poland, Germany, Belgium, France, England, America, Japan, back to India. 2.5 years of 8,000 miles journey on foot for peace, and meeting leaders of nuclear power in the Kremlin, in the White House, in 10 Downing Street, and all that places, and giving them a packet of peace tea. So this is a big story of 2.5 years, and I've written that now. I wrote a small chapter in my book, No Destination, but now I've written a complete book, the whole story, and that book is now out, and people can buy it.
Excellent, and here it is, I've got it here.
Yes.
So thank you, Satish, and thank you so much for that incredible and inspiring discussion. And we've got lots of messages of thank you from our book club members here, which I'll share with you later. But thank you so much, and I look forward to discussing your latest book on a future book club.
Thank you for inviting me to your book club, Marianne. I'm delighted and honored. Thank you.
Thank you so much.